One of the books that I wrote this year is called Turn Me On, and I wrote it with a guy named Mike Grigsby out of Kansas City, Missouri. He is the Director of Information Technology, the IT Director at the Kansas City Police Department. But the way that I met Mike was when I first started into business back in 1999. About 6 months before that, I'd gone to work for a consulting company called Conley & Company. And the first thing they wanted me to do, because I was the youngest one that worked there, which obviously meant I knew how to build websites, was to figure out how to get them a web presence. They were a CPA firm who had a consulting division. So, Mike is the guy that I found, and I just opened up the yellow pages and looked for web development. There were two companies. I called both of them, and the company that Mike was with was Dunovit and Mentor, and they're the only ones that called back. So that was the scientific process for choosing a web development company in 1999, was who will return my phone call. So I invite Mike and Bill Mentor and the other two folks, and I can't remember their names, over. We talk about the website. We get this whole thing going. They build a website. And during that time, it was about a month-long process, I really got to know Mike a little bit, and I liked the guy. He was fun to hang out with. He was interesting. He was witty. He had some great stories. He was military police with the Air Force before he got out of that. He was a writer for the newspaper. He got tired of doing that, so he taught himself graphic design, started doing graphic design on computers, and I thought, this guy can do anything. I need to try to get him in my business. And so I was going to take a sales trip to Austin, and his boss had already told me, if you ever take a sales trip and I can send Mike with you, I want to send him. Okay. And so I picked Mike up at 4 o'clock in the morning on a Thursday morning. 4 o'clock in the morning. From Abilene, Texas, we drove to Austin, and I had 4 people that I wanted to talk to, but I had 0 appointments. I didn't really believe in big preparation back then. I'm much better at that now. And so we're pulling into Austin. It's about 8 o'clock in the morning. Traffic has been pretty bad for 25, 30 minutes. We're getting into the downtown area, and I take out my big old flip phone, 1999, remember, and I call this guy named Richie Jackson from the Texas Restaurant Association. And I get the receptionist, and I said, hey, this is Jody Holland. Is Richie available? They go, oh, no, he's not in yet. I said, oh. Well, my buddy Dick Waterfield said that I had to meet Richie the next time I was in town. I had a little extra time, so I thought I'd try to swing by. She said, oh, well, I'll give the message to him, and I'm so sorry he's not here. And so I gave her my cell phone number, and I looked at Mike, and I go, you know what, let's swing by there anyway. He goes, wait, you don't have an appointment? He's like, we got up at 4 o'clock in the morning and drove to Austin, and you don't have a freaking appointment? I go, don't worry about it, man. And so we're 2 blocks away from there, and I make my way over to the Texas Restaurant Association, park in the parking lot. He goes, this is stupid. You can't walk in on a business. This is stupid. I said, just shut up and follow me. And so we walk into the business, and Richie, which I knew what he looked like, was walking in. I go, Richie, Jody Holland. He goes, oh, I just looked at your message. He said, so you're Dick's friend? I said, yeah, he and my dad were jogging buddies growing up. He goes, oh, well, come on back. And so we walk back to Richie's office, and Richie does pretty much all of the talking. He says, well, what do you do? I said, well, I do leadership development. I do training programs. I said, go pretty much anywhere and train for anybody on any topic related to developing people. And he goes, oh, that's fantastic. And he just keeps going and going and going about this project, this big project that they've got going. He finally goes, I need to introduce you to Bill. Bill is going to be running this project. Come on, come with me. Mike hadn't said a word. And so we walk out of the office, we go upstairs, we go to Bill's office, and he goes, Bill, this is Jody Holland, and Mike goes, Mike, he goes, and Mike. And they're expert trainers that are going to help with our ServSafe project. Now at this point I'm thinking, what is ServSafe? And what is the project that we're helping with? Because I have no idea what's going on here. And Bill goes, oh, thank goodness. I didn't know where we were going to find 2 more trainers. And Mike's like looking around going, I'm a graphic designer. I don't even know what you're talking about. And I didn't know what ServSafe was. So Bill talks about this project and how awesome it's going to be and how we're going to just take the world by storm developing this new food safety program. I'm like, oh, so it's food safety. I got that. I'm kind of on the right page now. Now, me personally in biology, I did make it through the class. That is all I can say about biology is I survived and I made it through the class in high school. So Bill's like, oh, well, we've got to get Ernie involved because Ernie's actually the one that was in charge of the pitch that we're going to be doing next week. Okay. So we walk into Ernie's office, a couple of doors down, and Bill goes, Ernie, this is Jody Holland and Mike. And Mike. And they're ServSafe experts, and they're going to be doing the Walmart pitch for us next Friday. We're experts in what? And so I'm just kind of going along because I have no idea what's going on exactly. But I'm confident enough that I can stand up and present anything that I just kind of play along. So he talks about Walmart, and we're going to be flying to Bentonville, Arkansas, and we're pitching. We will be training all of the corporate trainers for Walmart worldwide. It's going to be so cool. And he goes, now are you currently certified as a ServSafe trainer? And I said, not currently. And he goes, okay, well, we've got a class we're going to do here on Tuesday, so can you be back here in Austin on Tuesday of next week, get you certified, then we'll fly out Thursday for Bentonville. I said, yeah, not a problem. And so we talk a little bit longer, and I go, hey, by the way, just so I'm kind of refreshed and ready for this, can I get the material to study over the weekend, just to refresh it in my mind? He goes, yeah, sure, yeah, here's the full trainer's guide, here's this, and he gives me all this stuff, gives Mike a copy of everything. He goes, man, I'm so excited. So we leave, Mike gets in the car, and he goes, what the? And I go, what do you mean? He goes, you're going to Arkansas to train Walmart corporate trainers? I go, oh, I don't think I'm training them. I'm just going along for the ride to help out. And surely they don't expect me to train Walmart's corporate trainers. Come back on Tuesday, take the class. Don't bring Mike with me because he's employed by someone else. I brought another one of my trainers with me. We both take the class. We both pass. I got a 95. The other trainer got a 97 in the class. You have to have a 90 to be a trainer. And then I get on an airplane Thursday morning headed to Bentonville, Arkansas. Now, we're supposed to train them in one day. And I'm thinking, I'm here for moral support. Maybe I'll get them excited or something. Thursday evening, we're drinking a glass of scotch. And Ernie looks over at me and goes, are you ready? I go, yeah, sure. He goes, thank God, because there's no way I'm doing that training. I drink the rest of the glass and I go, am I doing all of the training? He goes, yeah, that's why we brought you. Oh, okay. So I'm doing the entire training, and we get there that morning, we meet with the executives from Walmart. We have every corporate trainer for Walmart worldwide in Bentonville for this. And by the way, Walmart's training facility is folding chairs and folding tables. So they are true to their nature. You can buy everything that's in their training room at your local Walmart store. They tell me, you guys won't get this deal unless everybody passes. Do what? Everybody in the room? There's almost 50 trainers in the room. Everybody has to pass? Now, to pass and be a trainer, again, that's a score of a 90, not a score of a 70. So I did the training. I made it as exciting as I could be. I drew them in the best that I could. Thank goodness I had read that book 4 times from the time I left Austin until the time I came back and took the actual class. We had a 100% pass rate. Everybody in the class passed. And we got a 6-week, 5 days a week training contract with Walmart that my company actually got to implement. So I tell you that story because of one primary thing. When you are a great presenter, your material is secondary to your presentation. And whether you're talking about presenting as a salesperson or you're presenting as a professional speaker or in a boardroom or as a CEO of a company, every day you're pitching you. You're trying to present to people the best version of you that exists out there. So when Mike and I wrote that book, we were thinking back to that experience in Austin, Texas. When we got back to Abilene, I offered Mike a job. 9 o'clock at night when we finally got back, and we did several other appointments. All of them went very well. We get back to Abilene, and I said, Mike, I want you to go to work for me. What's it going to take? And he named a price, and I said, done. And he goes, really? I go, yeah, really. I really want you to work for me. I think we make a good team. This could be a lot of fun. He slammed his hand in the door when he got out of his car at home, and he had to give a 30-day notice. About the time that his fingernail grew back out to where it wasn't black and blue was when his 30-day notice at Donovan and Minner was up. So he goes, that was just reminding me of the pain of where I was at and how much better it was going to be when I left. And he worked for me for a couple of years until I sold that business, and then he went to work for a company in Waco, and then he went to work for a company in Austin. So in Waco, he was a customer service manager. In Austin, he was a graphic designer. When he moved to Kansas City, he was in the gym working out and saw a guy wearing a KCPD workout shirt, and he went, dude, that looks cool. He goes, yeah, Kansas City Police Department. He goes, I think I want to be a cop. And so just one day went and signed up, went to the police academy, became a beat cop, did that for about 2 months. The FBI recruited him to run their online investigations. He did that, internet crimes, and then he did worked in the porn division, which he says nobody should ever do that. It will destroy your soul. And then he quit there, decided he was going to go into business, did that for about 6 months, sold that to another guy, went back to work for the Kansas City Police Department as the IT director. So Mike, what he figured out is the same thing that I figured out. When you're good at presenting, you can do anything you want to do. You don't have to do what you've always done. You can do anything you want to do. I would say that audiences identify with a story with a lesson in it significantly better than just a lecture. When you can tell a story and you start getting some of those reactions from people non-verbally, that's when you realize you've got them. So your job is to have a story that relates to people. Now, that story is an actual true story, and that's how I did training for Walmart Corporate, and why I will never do training for Walmart ever again. In this book, what we talk about is how do you unleash the great presenter that's in you? Because you have within you the capability to build the skill sets of a great presenter. Everything that I do when I'm in front of a group, it is a portrayal of a great presenter. It's not so much that it's just me that was naturally born to present. The reality is all presenters are born, but they're born through struggle and they're born through practice. You don't wake up one day and go, I'm going to be a great presenter. When I was in 6th grade, I was scared to death to talk in front of anyone. In fact, I was scared of everything. I was scared of chihuahuas. I was scared of heights. I was scared of girls. Still a little afraid of girls. I was scared of everything when I was a little kid. And something happened in junior high. I joined UIL, and my dad convinced me to do this impromptu speaking thing where you get a topic, you have 2 minutes to prepare, and you give a 5-minute presentation on the topic that you drew out of a hat. And when I won the regionals in 7th grade for doing that, I started thinking, God, this is really fun. Like, maybe someday when I grow up, I could get paid to just talk, so I don't have to get a job. That was the objective as a junior high kid, was get paid to talk so you don't have to work. You learn to play the part of the presenter. You are not the presenter. And that's the distinguishing thing that I try to point out in that first chapter, is that if you can remember that this is like acting. When you get up to present in front of a group, you think about the way you move, think about the way you carry yourself, and you know your lines. You know what you need to say. But it is an act when you're in front of the group. If you struggle with an emotional connection, if you respond too emotionally, this one thing is one of the easiest ways to control that emotion when you're giving a presentation. It is an act. You are standing up presenting as an actor or actress, not as yourself. When you do that, you create a psychological separation from who you are to who you need to be right now. It takes away most of your jitters about speaking. You learn to not use the ums, the ands, all of those pause words. You become significantly better at engaging an audience because you are an actor. One of the best speakers I ever heard used to be a strong safety in the NFL. And I watched this guy, and what he talked about was your physical movement. And when he moved around the stage, you couldn't take your eyes off of him. I really don't know exactly what he said, but he was one of those guys you were going to watch. And he told his story, and really the point of his presentation was everyone has a story. Everyone has a story to tell, and if you can come up with what your story is to engage people, to help them understand why you should be talking about what you're talking about, that's when they buy in. But when he would do it, he was talking about, he was the kid that every day practiced running backwards. He wanted to be a strong safety, and so he knew that he had to be really good at running backwards fast. So he's the 8-year-old that they thought needed a helmet because he was doing this all day long, running backwards as fast as he could. And guess what? He made it. He wasn't the biggest guy. He was 5'9", but he was determined. And so that's the story. I believe that talent is wasted on the gifted. People who are naturally gifted at doing something don't think they need to put any effort into it. So people who were born naturally speaking in front of a group, they're the ones that they don't know the material as well. They don't prep for things. They just show up and talk. Zig Ziglar would still prepare before every presentation. He would go over his presentation 3 or 4 times. And it's the same presentation he gave for over 4 decades. But he would still prepare for every presentation. Same thing is true for us. If you're going to sell or you're going to present, know what it is you need to talk about. You want to give as many speeches as possible. When I started out in my own business, I started contacting Kiwanis clubs and Rotary clubs and Lions clubs and any civic organization or association that I could find. And I said, hey, my name is Jody Holland and I speak on these 3 topics. I'd love to come speak for you and I won't charge you a penny. I did close to 1,000 speeches in 2 years. There were times that I would speak at a breakfast, at a lunch, and a dinner, all in the same day. Because I needed the practice. I knew that if I didn't get out there and present every day, I wouldn't ever be good at what I wanted to do for a living. When I first went into business, I was confident, possibly cocky, but not necessarily really skilled. The skill came with the practice. And I practiced and I practiced and I practiced. Because there are people who are great presenters that are significantly better than I was naturally. But I was willing to put in the work for it. You want to give your main speech at least 12 times before you ask for money. And that was the thing that I did, as I said, okay, I want to talk about X. And my X at that time was culture development within your company. And so I honed this speech. The 12 times gave me enough time to adjust the speech and keep tweaking it until it got to the point where people would come up afterwards and go, oh my gosh, that was so great. Thank you. When I got to that was so great, thank you, and the double clasp on the hand, I'm like, nailed it. That's what I was looking for. Then I started going, $1,000. You want to hire me? I'll come talk for 30 minutes for $1,000. And guess what? People hired me. Because they go, oh yeah, I heard you at Rotary. That was so good. Yeah, I definitely want to hire you to come into my company. Sales become easier if you're already practiced in it. Next thing in the next chapter in there is be the audience. You want to show them something awesome, not just tell them something awesome. 93% of all communication is non-verbal. 58% of it is your body language, the way you carry yourself and move yourself, with 35% of it being your tone of voice. Now, your facial expressions are a part of your body language. When you're in a group about this size, you move about like this. When you're in a group that's 1,500, you move like this. Your movements become more exaggerated based on the size of the group. So you just look at your group and you go, I got 15 people, so I'm going to move about like this. One-on-one, you're doing like this as you talk to people. So just imagine the more people, the more revved up your movements have to be, so it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. You watch Zig Ziglar on a stage with 10,000 people when he was doing his stuff, and he would go prime that pump. It wasn't, you've really got to prime the pump. He didn't do that. I'm like, he ran across the stage. He said, got that pump, and he's pumping away. You've got to prime that pump. And he would just, he's yelling this stuff, and you're like, yeah! And you don't even know why you're excited. You're just super excited because he had a lot of energy. That's what you do the bigger the audience. First time that I had an audience over 1,000 people, I had to look and go, okay, if I'm going to keep 1,000 people, and it was actually about 1,700, engaged, I can't do it the same way I would if I'm having a 20-person group like this. And so what you do is you look to the left and you pick a person. You look in the middle and you pick a person. You look to the right and you pick a person. You can't connect with everybody. But if there's one over here and one right there and one over there, it's pretty easy for you to make eye contact with 3 people. And you pick 3 people that respond well to you when you first start. All the pressure's off because you're training 3 people. The other 1,747, they're just random people sitting in chairs. So you don't have to worry about them so much. You just pick those 3 people. But it's on both sides and in the middle. That way you remember to move. Now, your audience's butt is connected to their brain. And it's really important to remember that. If their butt goes to sleep, so does their brain. So if you don't have something interesting to say that maybe makes them shift just a little bit or move around, you've only got about 30 minutes before people start texting or sleeping, one or the other. Texting never was a problem in the very beginning because none of us knew how to do it. Sleeping was the only problem at that point. So figure out what your story is and develop your style. Watch the way that your voice sounds. You want to record yourself. You want to listen to playbacks of what you sound like. And so you can learn, is my voice going up and down enough so that it's not that monotone, that boring? You don't want to get too pitchy. There are some people out there that go over the top and raise their voice way too much. You're not necessarily a Baptist missionary preacher. You are a presenter. Now, if you are a Baptist missionary preacher, do it, man. Get them excited. Raise your voice. But develop your style. Don't worry about what anybody else is necessarily. Develop your style, your best version of you. I've always dealt with hecklers, particularly in the larger groups, and Jordan and I were talking about hecklers before we started this, that there's going to be somebody that's going to question you or disagree with you or anything like that. Most of the time what I found is they ask me a question, I'm thinking, where did that come from? It has very little to do with what we're talking about, or it's something we're going to deal with later. Now, if I'm going to deal with it later, what I'll normally say is, that is a fantastic question. In fact, that is so fantastic, I've already addressed it later in the presentation. Would it be okay if we wait till we get there so I keep things in order? Most of the time, they'll just go, yep. Every now and then they'll go, well, I really want to know. But that's usually in the 10 or 15 person settings. If they start just disagreeing with you, don't let it fluster you. Remember, you're playing a part. It's not about you, it's about the presenter that's in you. And I'll give you an example. I was doing training for a police department. In this police department, we had one particular individual, and he ran the police academy, and he was unhappy. I'm pretty sure just unhappy that he was still alive, but particularly unhappy that he was in my training program. 12 months of training, 6 hours a day, 1 day a month for 12 months. It was about month 4 before this guy participated in anything. He sat, arms crossed, scowl on his face, not participating. It was incredibly obvious. We'd go around the room and everybody would share something and it'd get to Joe and Joe would go and just stare angrily forward. Never said a thing, never participated. Finally, 4 months in, we're talking about conflict resolution. The perfect topic. And we're going around, we're talking about stuff, and right in the middle of the assistant chief, Kenny, saying something, he goes, F you. He didn't use just the letter, he used the whole word. He said, I hate this blankety blank. I mean, he just went off. And I waited till he finished. And I go, Joe, you participated. That's awesome. Just like that. The whole room busted out laughing. Even Joe started laughing. Afterwards, he came up and he goes, I wouldn't have handled that as cool as you did. He goes, I've been a real, and he said a curse word, I'm going to try to be better. I said, man, I appreciate it. By the end of the course, the 12th class, I finished up. He came up to me and he goes, man, I learned an incredible amount of information. This stuff was fantastic. He goes, I wonder what I missed in the first 3 classes. I said, a lot. And for a price, I'll come back and teach it again. So you want to make sure that you remember that everyone is valuable, even the people that are disagreeing with you. Everyone has a lesson to share. Joe's lesson that he shared with himself and the rest of the group is you only learn when you participate. And I learned from him that if I allow someone else to control my emotional state in the room, I can't teach. I lose my train of thought, all that kind of stuff. Because the first class, I was flustered. Second class, I'm like, I'm just going to teach. I'm going to be a happy guy because that's who I am. And we'll just see what happens. And then you want to connect with influencers. And I got this from John Wesley, who started the Methodist movement. Now, John Wesley, in reading about his life, and I went through this whole adventure thing in church, learning about him, he would preach mostly in bars and at factories and in mines. I mean, it was never in a building. And when he would first get to the bars in particular, he would find the biggest, toughest, meanest looking dude there. And he would go up to him and he would say, my name is John Wesley. What's your name?
Jack.
Jack, it's a pleasure to meet you. Hey, can I ask you 3 questions?
Sure.
Have I ever done or said anything that made you mad?
Not yet.
Okay. Do you believe that you have the right to say what you need to say and that people should listen?
Absolutely.
Do you think that I should have the same right as you?
Of course.
Thank you. I really appreciate you encouraging me, and I want to thank you in advance for your help and making sure that other people believe what you believe. And that's what John Wesley did every time he was going to preach. Because the first 2 times he preached, he got beat up, he got rocks thrown at him, he got drugged behind a horse and buggy. And so he started going to the biggest dude, and when people would start heckling him, Jack would stand up and go, hey, I'm listening. And everybody else would go, okay, we're listening too. And it worked. And it worked for 60 plus years for him to use that methodology. Connect with the influencers. A new twist on an old reality. William James, who's the father of American psychology, said, that which I perceive is my reality. Now, is Jordan's reality the same as mine? No. Everybody has their own interpretation of what this world actually is. Our job as presenters is not to complicate the simple. It's to simplify the complex. One of the reasons that I struggle with hiring people with advanced degrees to do training is because they need people to understand that they're super smart, smarter than the rest of the group, and so they tend to complicate things. They add a whole bunch of stuff that is irrelevant to the point so that they come across as much more brilliant. The reality is our job is to take a whole bunch of different information, synthesize it down, make it easy to understand, and teach it to people. Whether you're talking about explaining the vision of your company and where you want to go, or how to solve problems, you've got to be able to make it easy to understand. The quality of the response that you get from other people is the quality of your message. So if people don't get what you're saying, it's not them, it's you. It's like the t-shirt that I really wanted to get in high school. Hey, we're breaking up, but don't worry, it's not me, it's you. The reality is, it is me though. If I present and people don't understand it, I didn't present it in the right way. I complicated it or I added too much to it. I needed to simplify it down. We've got something old, something new, something borrowed, and something blue. The something old is, where did that come from? etymonline.com is the etymology or the origin of words. one of my favorite websites to go to. It's a free resource. And if you want to understand where horse feathers came from, you can go to ETYM online and type in horse feathers. And guess what? You will get an explanation of where the term horse feathers came from, or influence, or any other word like that. It's really kind of cool to go, okay, well, that was first used in 1412, using it in 1500, and here's how the meaning has changed over the centuries. When you can start understanding the origin of the word and the meaning based on what it was and what it is today, it changes your perspective. As something new, what are the trends today? You know, if you're trying to teach a concept about business management or about motivation, you should be reading Dan Pink in his book Drive. You should find things that are relevant today that connect from the past to the present. Something borrowed is a blended concept. I'm going to take Stephen Covey and John Maxwell and Patrick Lencioni, and I've read books from all of those guys, and I'm going to go, they're all talking about leadership. Here's my version of what all three of them said. So I'm synthesizing it into my message instead of three other messages. Now, I typically will reference, first time I read about this concept for Motivation 3.0 was in Dan Pink's book, Drive. It's, you can't give them something to get something. You only give them something after they've already done something. So it's not if then, it's now that. Once I first started reading that stuff, I started going, I have a new idea for motivation. I understand better why the things that I had tried in the past weren't working. And so I'll tell my experience and then give it to them. And the something blue is creating a vision of where they can go. When I started a management program doing our Buddy to Boss series with a company, I get them to imagine what it would be like if they all cooperated perfectly. What if all of their employees showed up on time, ready to work, and worked hard all day, and left happy? What would their company be like then? Once you get them into the visualization, the imagery of where it could be, you've got them. Because in their mind, the only way that we think is in pictures. We don't think in words. So you're trying to get that visualization to happen in their mind so that at the end of the day, when they walk away, they keep the picture that you painted for them in their head. Look, listen, and learn. Genius is the ability to create a connection between two disparate points. Things that don't seem to connect. Henry Ford was one of the best at creating those connections. When he was trying to figure out how to do the assembly line, he went and watched them take hogs apart. Now, what does cutting up hogs have to do with an assembly line? In his mind, he's thinking, I don't know how to put it all together in the right order, but I know a group of people that knows how to take stuff apart in the right order. And what he saw that was that each butcher had their knife and their cut that they made. But none of them did all of the work. They had their individual, and the hog is tied up by its back hooves, hanging down, and it's going on this little conveyor belt thing. It's running across the ceiling like that. And it would come to one, and he kind of does this. Then he's got the next one, and he's got the next one, and that's what he does all day, that one cut. So he's brilliant at that specific cut. Ford went, what if we go the other direction? What if each person doesn't have to know anything about how the car works as a complete whole? Instead, they have to know how to put the wheels on, or how to put the steering wheel, or whatever it is that was their point. They didn't have to know everything else. So what we learn is how to create a connection in another person's mind. When they're trying to solve a problem, most people need a comparison. Okay, this is going to be like. Once they've got a it's like, it's much easier for them to understand. I learned in 1999 when I first went into business that leaders are readers. If you are not reading a new book every single month, you are not keeping up. I looked at my Audible account last night after the third time that I bought an extra 3 credits this year and went, okay, I'm definitely a good listener. I have this year on Audible read, I think, 20 books so far. And then I read books as well. And so you combine that stuff and you go, wow, once you get into learning, you love to learn. Because what I have figured out from my own life is every time I learn something new, I realize there's 2 more things I need to know. Every time I learn, I know I need to learn more. Look for learning opportunities within your programs. Watch how people are responding to you. If you start losing them, you need to change directions, change tone, move them around. Give them a break. Whatever it is that you need to do, but you need to be watching. Now, you listen to the teaching of others. Even those hecklers, I started figuring out, thanks to Joe, that I was going to have to be much more connected and not just teaching. If I don't connect with the group first, I have a lot more of that struggle of, I don't really want to do this. So I've found ways to do little icebreakers at the beginning of most of my big programs, and most of my programs run a year long with a company. So I connect with them up front so that I don't have to wait 4 months before the Joes of the world decide it's a good idea to listen. And learn from every experience. Everything that you do teaches you something. Thomas Edison was asked, why didn't you quit when you were trying to make the incandescent light bulb, the incandescent lamp? And he said, I just couldn't. I knew I had to figure out the answer. And they go, but you failed over 9,000 times. He goes, no. I discovered over 9,000 ways not to make the light bulb. It's just perspective. If you learn from the experience, you just discovered a new way not to do that again. And so you try it different and you try it different. There's so many people, though, that don't learn from their own mistakes. They make a mistake, it doesn't work out, they come back and do it again, it doesn't work out, they come back and do it again, it doesn't work out, and it's over and over and over again. Einstein defined that as insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. The next chapter is plagiarize nicely. Ever want to perform death by bullet point? A lot of the presentations that I've seen over the years on one slide like this would have 5-point font with bullet point after bullet point after bullet point, and the trainer does this. Do not perform death by bullet point on your audience. Sunspots, solar flares, swamp gas. They just read what's on the slide. I can read, and most of the people in my classes can read very well also. So if all the trainer or the presenter is there to do is read, there's no point in the presentation. You have some notes that keep you on track, or you have a picture that keeps you on track, something along those lines. But you don't have everything that is in there. When I started doing presentations, there was very little technology available. I started figuring out that if I was going to copy the presentation style of another person, I had to learn technology. Some of the best presenters that I knew used PowerPoint and made these great PowerPoints, and they integrated some audio. They did these cool things, and this is back in 1999. I thought, I want to do some of those things as well. So I'm plagiarizing their style just a little bit, but I had to learn that if I don't know how to do technology, I'm going to be in trouble. I don't know that I can count the number of times that I went on before or after another presenter, and they go, hey, do you know how to operate one of these stick thingies? And I go, the thumb drive? They go, oh, yeah, is that what it's called? And I'm thinking, they paid you the same they're paying me. And you call it a stick thingy, and you don't know how to stick it in the side of the computer. So there will always be something magical out there that can screw up your technology. Know your information backwards and forwards so that even if your PowerPoint crashes, or in this case I use Prezi, even if your Prezi doesn't work, or the internet is bad, or their bulb blows out, you're still okay. You can still do your presentation, because there will always be sunspots, solar flares, and swamp gas that interfere with your best of intentions in presenting. You want to try to be an edutainer. Not an educator, not an entertainer, an edutainer. You want to be educational and engaging at the same time. People buy into that more than they buy into anything else. Before the curtain goes up, when I give a presentation, particularly when it's a larger presentation, I have a specific ritual that I follow. And most great presenters that I know still have a specific ritual that they follow. There are a lot of actors and a lot of speakers out there that still throw up before they go on because they're so nervous. They've got butterflies so bad. The only place I get truly freaked out is if I'm ever asked to speak at church. And I think that was because growing up in the church, all I did for 18 years is watch my dad. And he's a great presenter up there. So I take my wedding ring, this is my thing, and I'll pull it off, I turn it over, and I put it back on. It is for me just a physical anchor that says it's time to spin those good feelings and get your confidence going. And then I start telling myself, you are going to do great. At the end of this, people are going to be coming up to you going, holy crap, I learned so many cool things today. And so I'm playing this over in my mind, I'm inspiring me. And then when it's time to go on, I'm ready. And I head out there. But I go through this same process every time I give a presentation. I was in Florida a couple of weeks ago, and I went on after this guy named Justin Fusau, I can't pronounce his last name, but anyway, his company is Justin Inspires. And the dude is all over the stage. I mean, he is excited. He is so excited to be alive and to be there and to be presenting. And I'm supposed to talk about how to read people when he finishes. So mine is kind of technical. It's still fun, but it's still kind of technical. So when he leaves, I'm thinking, he's fixing to leave. I'm like, oh my gosh, he was so good. I had to remember to go back to, he may be good, but you're incredible. And he's not talking about what you're talking about. He talked about his own thing. People are going to love the stuff that you have to share with them. They loved him. They're going to love you even more. And just on and on and on and on. Keith Harrell was one of the best speakers that I've ever heard. And I heard him in Nashville, Tennessee, talking about getting people excited. I had never heard of the dude in 1997 when I heard him for the first time. He runs up on the stage, full speed, gets up there and he goes, I had a vision. And we're like, okay. I had a vision that when I came up here, you people are going to be so excited to see me. You're going to be standing in your chairs, you're going to be yelling and screaming. So when the music starts, I expect you to be as excited as I have you in my mind. Can you do that? And everybody's like, yeah! Who is this? And so he runs back out of the room. The music starts, he runs into the room, and you hear, help me welcome Keith Harrell! And I stood in my chair. I didn't even know who he was. But I grabbed my chair, I stood up, I started shouting and screaming and pumping my fists in the air because in his mind I was already doing that. And there were 6,000 people in that room. And we all were doing this. Now, not everybody was in their chair, thank goodness, because some of them would have fallen. But we were excited. He unleashed himself, but he also unleashed us. He gives permission to actually be happy. And finally, may I have another? In a lot of other cultures, the burp after the meal signifies that the meal was fantastic. Now, in the United States, it's not so much acceptable for you to belch after your meal. So I noticed that none of you let out a big burp after the meal today. I just didn't hear it. I kind of figured you did, but you know. The way that you know that what you did was fantastic is they ask you to come back. Now, there's some really scientific secrets to being asked to come back. Whether you're doing a presentation for your local civic organization or anything else, first is do your very best. Get them excited. And there's some techniques that you can use to get them excited. Here's a really, really, really scientific one. You have to be excited. If you're not excited, why would they be excited? All they're going to do is mirror you. So knock their socks off and then plant the idea. The way that I do that is throughout a presentation with a company, I'll say, you know, one of the other topics that will be really helpful for you guys is, and I suggest another topic that I'm not currently training on. And I'll do that 2 or 3 times throughout the presentation without saying, will you please hire me again? But instead I'll say, this is another idea. And it will be a legitimate idea. I mean, it's something that would actually be good for them based on what they're experiencing and how they're responding. And then this is the big one. Ask. At the end of my presentations that I do for big associations, I always say, I have absolutely loved being with you today. If you have enjoyed what you have learned today, I simply ask you to tell everyone you've ever met. You can blog about it, post on Facebook, you can tweet about it, you can take a picture of me and put it on Instagram. Heck, if you want, you can buy a billboard. That seems excessive, but I'm okay with it. If you didn't enjoy it, please remember what my kindergarten teacher taught me. Nobody likes a whiner. And so I throw it out there like that, and if I plant in their mind that they should be talking about it, guess what they do? They talk about it. After 1 year and 500 sales presentations, that was my first year in business, and closing 52 deals in the first year, I went, repeat business would be real nice. Because I didn't have any repeat business my first year in business until I added that. At the end of it, and well, obviously at that time wasn't blog about it, but it was tell everybody, tell your friends, write it in the church bulletin. It was things like that. And then I would say, I really want to come back and help you some more. Thank you guys very much, blah, 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 and I would let them go. So I did those kinds of things because people need to be thinking of it. I have found that there is an inordinate amount of people who do not think about asking you back, even though they loved you, unless you plant in their mind that they should ask you back. So if you want to grow your presence in a community, if you want to be mayor someday, or you want to be in Congress, or you want to be the governor, or whatever, you have to have a lot of opportunities to be out there in front of people. If you want to be a key influencer in any segment of the market, whether it is in the entrepreneurial segment or with educators or anywhere else, you have to be out there. Your job is to turn people on. You start by turning yourself on and then igniting the fire under them. So that is a very quick overview of the book. I do have the book for sale, obviously. So if any of you would like to buy a copy of it, you can buy it today for just a flat $10. The book's $14.99 plus tax otherwise, but today, $10 only. I am on my path. I don't know how many of you you've heard. I know Mark's heard this. My goal this year, my big, hairy, audacious goal, was to write 12 books in a year. And so I have now completed writing 8 books this year. I have 4 to go. So this is one of those that I wrote. It's an easy read. I reread the book last night to make sure I didn't say anything wrong today as I was prepping for this presentation. Thank you guys very much, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Make sure to look for Jody Holland's books on Amazon.com. Also check him out at Jody Holland, JodyHolland.com. Also, take time to connect with Jody on LinkedIn and on Facebook. You can find Jody on LinkedIn by searching Jody Holland or searching Jody.Holland at cloudinterview.com. If you'd like to book Jody for a speech at your business, please contact him at 806-355-5567. Have a fantastic day.